Speaking of SPACs and autos, we've got some more news this morning, and Phil LeBeau joins us now with a special guest. Phil.
Joe, the Lucid news is interesting. Also interesting are some of the key suppliers behind what's happening with autonomous and electric vehicles. AEye today announcing that it will be going public with a SPAC that is just being introduced. Let's bring in Blair LaCourte, who is the CEO of AEye. And for people at home, let's explain. The company's name is spelled A and then EYE, not A as in artificial intelligence. Blair, thanks for joining us today. I'm curious, you're raising $455 million in gross proceeds through this SPAC to develop what you guys call intelligent LiDAR. How is that different than the other LiDAR systems that have already either gone public through SPACs or are being incorporated by automakers?
Sure. Okay. Good morning, Phil. Active LiDAR is very similar to the difference between a passive system that sends out signals and takes and detects. An active system actually intelligently scans the environment. You may know it from many automated targeting systems in the military, ISR systems, or missile defense systems. When you have to track objects in movement or objects that are small and that need to be acquired so that you understand what they are, active systems tend to be the best way to do that.
Blair, we've seen a couple other SPAC deals with LiDAR-related companies or LiDAR manufacturers, and you're all developing this next-generation technology. But I have to tell you, when I've talked with executives in the auto industry, more than a few have said these are good for assisted driver systems. These are maybe not the best systems when we're talking about true autonomous driving, level 4, level 5. What do you say about that criticism that LiDAR has limits in that regard?
Yeah, actually, I think it's a fair comment when you talk about LiDAR in a general context. I think one of the things that you led off with is these are toolkits for robotic vision. They're going to be used with radar, with cameras. LiDAR is actually the only deterministic sensor. So it's the only sensor that can truly tell you what is out there, at distance and at depth. So we like to look at autonomy as a spectrum. Assisted driving systems may be autonomous when you're parking, in a traffic jam. The next generation of them will also do highway autopilot, right? Fully autonomous systems, we'll call those open loop systems, have to actually deal with all of those scenarios, and they have to deal with anything that comes up, a problem that a human would deal with. So they're much more difficult to actually implement. So I do believe that ADAS systems will be the first systems that we see and will be implemented in cars in the next couple of years.
And when you see the market right now, how big do you expect that to be in terms of that ADAS market, that assisted driver system market?
Well, I think the way to think about it is there's 88 million cars made every year. And as you've seen, many technologies migrate from, say, the military, radar, GPS, cameras, and camera algorithms. You've seen that at peak, they get to 80 to 90% penetration. And the question really is, how long will it take? That's driven by two things. One is how much safety can you add into a car, in fact, impact your safety ratings. The second is what feature can you give to a consumer that draws him in to actually pay for these new systems. If you take a look at radar, it took about 15 years to get to 80% penetration. Most people believe that LiDAR, because it adds so much value for things like highway, small objects, or very complicated environments in a city, we're looking at 7-8 years to penetrate, which means that very, very large market between 25 and 30.
And quickly, Blair, when do you expect the SPAC merger to close and for you guys to be publicly traded?
Sure. We, just announcing today, the common wisdom is that it's a 2 to 3 month process, depending on where we shake out with the SEC and when it really makes sense, when we're ready to actually make it happen. I mean, one of the things that, we always say to people is, look, a financing event is not a strategy. It's there to support a strategy. We've waited in our industry to do a SPAC past many of the others. And we'll be looking carefully at, when we actually de-SPAC and join as a public company on NASDAQ.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.